Chapter 15 is about freshwater. The case study is about the Colorado River, and you can see here's the Hoover Dam. It's pretty close to Las Vegas, and a lot of people visit the Hoover Dam when you go to Las Vegas. You can actually drive across it on a road that's pretty neat. So the Colorado River has a lot of controversy and a lot of political fighting. The river starts in Colorado and it empties into the sea between Baja and mainland Mexico. And so much water is diverted to cities for drinking water and to farmers for agriculture that on a lot of days, 80 to 100 days a year, it doesn't reach the ocean. And that dramatically affects the wetlands here in this area where it does reach the ocean, in the estuary area. California had a lot of Colorado River at one time because California had its population boom a lot earlier than the other states. When California started getting Colorado River water 40 years ago or so, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado and Utah, they weren't very populated. But in the last 20 years, these states have grown dramatically in population, and now they want some of that water. And it flows through those states before it gets to California. And so there's a lot of lawsuits and a lot of political fighting between the states for this water. In Santa Clarita, we do not use Colorado River water. A lot of your parents think we do. A lot of people in town think we do, but we do not use Colorado River water. That water is used mainly down south of Los Angeles City. So Orange County and San Diego County use Colorado River water. In Santa Clarita, we use water from up north, the Feather River, up north of Sacramento, and then we pump water also out of our own Santa Clara riverbed. And the water is usually underground in aquifers. Sometimes it's above ground, but we pump it out from the underground reservoirs. Turning to page 434, 97% of all the water on Earth is is ocean water. That leaves 3% is fresh, but 2% is locked in glaciers and ice, and we don't have access to it. So really, 1% of the Earth's water is available to drink or to farm with. And those are important stats to know. All right, on this page, you may need to pause the video, but on this page we have here a mind map of wetlands. We have two types of wetlands. Let me prop up my camera slowly. There we go. We have a freshwater wetlands, and then we have marine wetlands. Now, marine wetland is where a river meets the ocean, and we call them estuaries. I put 4 sticky notes together to make this mind map. It might be something you want to do as well. For freshwater, wherever you have water that kind of sits above the ground, you have a wetland, and they can be by rivers or lakes. They can be called bogs, marshes, mires, moors, swamps, playas, sloughs, and in literature you often see these terms. For example, in Sherlock Holmes, the Hound of the Baskervilles, the hound is on the moor. Well, a moor is basically a freshwater wetland inland, not by the ocean. So where a river meets the ocean, you have an estuary, and we have 2 types. Salt marsh estuary is in a temperate zone. That's what we have in California. We're temperate. We're not tropical. We're not polar. We're in between. And a salt marsh, the closest one you can find around here, well, I don't know if it's the closest, but it's one that's accessible, is at Carpinteria. If you go to Carpinteria to camp or just go to the beach, a little bit north of the city is the salt marsh, and the city beach is the salt marsh, and you can walk around. They have walking trails and things there. It's nice to go to visit. A mangrove forest is an estuary in a tropical zone, and it has special trees with big roots, mangrove roots. If you've ever heard of the bayou in Louisiana, the bayou is really a mangrove forest where the Mississippi River enters the Gulf of Mexico. There's benefits to wetlands, and you need to be able to write about economic benefits and environmental benefits to wetlands. The economic benefits, it provides flood protection. One of the reasons why Hurricane Katrina was so terrible in New Orleans was because they had filled in their wetlands with homes and businesses and roads, and then when the hurricane came, the wetland was no longer there to provide protection against flooding. Tourism, a lot of people go to wetlands to fish, to look at birds, to feed alligators in the bayou. They also recharge your aquifer, so they send water underground that can then be pumped out later for drinking water or for agriculture. And they also clean wastewater. In some small communities, instead of building a wastewater treatment plant, they'll build a wetlands. Environmental benefits. Well, recharging an aquifer is also an environmental benefit, and so is wastewater cleaning is also environmental as well. Biodiversity is, the promotion of biodiversity, which wetlands do, is important. Removing carbon from the atmosphere is important through photosynthesis and provides the base of the food web. And I need to draw another line here that I missed. And another environmental is wastewater cleaning. So I'm going to put an arrow here for wastewater cleaning. On this page, also make sure that you know these terms: tributary, watershed, floodplain, riparian. Riparian just means something having to do with a river. So a riparian ecosystem is a river ecosystem. And also the definition of wetlands. You don't need this. This is just my note for me. On the next page, you need to know the layers of a lake or pond: littoral, benthic, limnetic, and profundal. You need to know what each of those mean for your test. A couple of terms defining lakes. We have a eutrophic lake is similar to eutrophication in the ocean. Eutrophic lakes have a lot of nutrients, and because there's a lot of nutrients, there's a lot of plants. And those plants, as they grow, can choke up the lake and actually fill it up. So eutrophication in lakes actually fill up the lake. These would have to be very small lakes or ponds, and they can actually fill it up, and then you end up kind of with a wetland instead of a lake. An oligotrophic lake is the exact opposite. There's hardly any nutrients in the water, and because there's no nutrients, there's hardly any life at all. There's no plankton and no small fish and no algae and no plants, because all those things need nutrients, which means that there's a lot of oxygen in the water because nothing's using it up. There's no life, so nothing's using the oxygen. Also, because there's no algae or plankton, the water looks very, very clear. And so if crystal clear water on a lake is actually not a very good thing ecologically. You want it to be a little bit turbid, a little bit not clear. I wouldn't say it's dirty. It has some what we call turbidity, which is particles that are suspended in the water, and that's more healthy than an oligotrophic lake. A term that you need to know for your test, but it's not in your book, is BOD, biological oxygen demand. When things die in a body of water, it takes oxygen for the organisms to break down organic matter. Bacteria primarily. And sewage from humans that run into a body of water needs oxygen for the bacteria to decompose it, and other kinds of waste products as well, or even just dead plants and animals need oxygen. The bacteria need oxygen to decompose it. On the next page, we have here the world's largest aquifer. Well, first of all, an aquifer is basically groundwater. It's underground water. So when people have a well, they are basically getting groundwater, which are in aquifers. Know the definition of water table, an aquifer recharge zone, and an artesian aquifer. Also know about the Ogallala. It is the world's largest aquifer, and you can see the states that it's in here. On the next page, we have a couple of graphs, and the biggest thing to know from those charts and graphs is that Asia has the lowest water per capita per person. Now, Asia has a lot of rainfall. You can see here by this graph, this bar graph, Asia has a lot of rainfall, but it also has a lot of people. You know, like 3 billion people that live in that region. So per capita, that lowers the amount per capita. Turn to page 440. Make sure you know what consumptive and non-consumptive use of water is, and the breakdown of fresh water. 70% of fresh water is used for agriculture globally, 20% for industry, and 10% residential. However, in the U.S., most goes to industry, which is down here. You can see down here it's for industry. Alrighty, and turn to page 442. So on page 442, globally we are extracting more water than is returning through rain. We call that recharge. So when we recharge aquifers, the recharge comes from the rain. So when we overpump groundwater, it can cause salt water to intrude into an aquifer in coastal areas, and then it ruins your aquifer because you can't drink salty water and you can't water your crops with salty water. So in essence, you've lost that water supply by overpumping it. In cities, if you overpump your aquifer, you can break pipes, sinkholes can develop, and in deserts, oases can dry up. Down here is a big sinkhole from overpumping an aquifer. All right, this is kind of a map here of the Colorado River and what is diverted here and there. And a lot of it is diverted in aqueducts. Now this is not in your book, but it is on your test. An aqueduct is a man-made river to carry water from one area to another. For example, the LA Aqueduct, which is next to Saugus High School and runs all the way across by the Walmart on Golden Valley Road, over the hill and down to LA City. That is an aqueduct. It's a tube aqueduct. Some aqueducts are kind of open. They look more like man-made rivers than tubes. Aqueducts are used heavily in Southern California to get water from Northern California, which is the case for Santa Clarita and LA City, and to bring water from the Colorado River, which is more the case down again in Orange County and San Diego County. On the next page, turn to 445. We have the Aral Sea. The Aral Sea is right here, and it was fed by streams that created this sea in Central Asia. And the rivers were diverted for agriculture that the sea shrunk, and it shrunk so fast it stranded boats and things. They stopped the diverting, and now the Aral Sea is returning and increasing back to size. Make sure you know the term dike and levee. These are either concrete or made out of the earth, and they hold back water. They prevent flooding to save farms, homes, property. But one of the problems with holding back water to prevent flooding is that you also prevent nutrients, because flooding is actually a natural process that brings nutrients to the land. In fact, the best farmland is near rivers because of flooding and nutrients. This is why many cities have started near rivers, because it has really good farmland. And if you think about the only farm that's in Santa Clarita, Lombardi Ranch, it's right in the flood bank of Bouquet Creek, the floodplain of Bouquet Creek.